It's 2024, November 2024, and I'm sure you have heard about the practice of inner child. It's been everywhere. I want to say, especially since the pandemic, after 2021, when we started realizing that during the pandemic, a lot of people started taking care of their mental health. When we started having this mental health crisis, and that's one perspective we can have about the whole subject. Oh my goodness. Say hello. But I like to think also that the pandemic helped us so much to create a space into our activities during our days. And people got curious and they wanted to go inside and explore what else there is about humans. And yeah, inner child is just one of the most wonderful practices we can do. If you are in this video, I'm very glad that you are here. If you don't know much about it, I will break down exactly what it is, how you can start getting familiar with this practice. If you already know a little bit, you're welcome also to stay in this video. I'm going to share a little bit about my experience, how I approach it. There are many ways how to approach it. I want to start by saying that the more gentle you can do with all kind of practices that require to check in your, let's say, traumatic experiences, difficult experiences in your past, the best. In my own experience, I had to do it, I would say, in the harsh way. I had to learn the harsh way. I went a little too intense doing inner child work, and I don't regret. I think maybe the fact that I had to do it, I experienced it that way, is why took me in my own exploration of learning how I wanted to do it. And maybe that's the reason why I am here today, sharing the things that have worked for me. So welcome back to another video. My name is Melisa, and if you have been following my channel, you probably know that I'm starting a business guided by my intuition. I have to say that you might be asking, like, what do you mean guided by your intuition? That might sound a little strange, a little different, because if you're in a creative or entrepreneur, I think for the most part we hear people starting businesses from, you know, a business plan, or after studying, analyzing a market, understanding the needs and the lacks that might have a market. And maybe you are already thinking, like, if you're just following your intuition, that's not a business that is going to be very successful. So I'm very happy that you are here. If you maybe are curious about how to follow your intuition and how you can start a business guided by your intuition, because everything that I've been sharing on my videos are the things that have helped me, are the practices that I've been doing during this process, and I will soon sharing where the actual business is going and what's happening with the business. For now, it's a lot of the part of the self-discovery, part of the process of starting a business. Why it's so helpful and why it's so important? I think what comes to my heart is that it helps you to have ownership of your life. Especially, let's say, if you have had the belief, if you have had the interpretation that the things that happened to you when you were little, or because a lack of love or a lack of attention from your parents or from the adults around you. And I want to say that might be also part of your story. I don't want to say that there are not parents that maybe are not as connected with their mission of being a parent. But even though something that has helped me so much, even with my relationship with my parents, is to understand that in every second right now, let's say, in every second of our lives, I am doing my best. You are doing your best. Every single human is doing their best. So what my parents did in, you know, in the moment they were raising us, as you know, when we were little. It was their best. It wasn't the best. I it wasn't the version of parents I wanted. That's true too. That's valid. But if it was the best they could do, I couldn't say it wasn't. So when we have this mindset, when we have this perspective, it allowed us to have a lot of compassion, a lot of acceptance in our story, and I want to say it opens up the door for us to start having that ownership that I'm I'm describing in this video, which is the main benefit that I find in doing this kind of practice of working with your little you, the little version of yourself. And I know you might be thinking, or you might be a little confused, like, what is she talking about if now there are so many parenting styles and methods that are actually teaching parents how to treat children, how to provide a safe environment for children. Well, I'm very glad for these new parents, and I'm very glad for these new children. Probably in 10-20 years they are going to be amazing humans. But the thing is, like, our parents, I'm in my mid-30s, our parents just didn't have this knowledge. So we cannot compare the information we have these days and the way parents do things to the way they used to do when they were, you know, when we were little. And the other thing to this is that even these kids that now are getting so much knowledge and, you know, such a balanced environment at their homes, they're also going to get traumatized from different things. So they're going to have also to work with their inner child when they are our age later in life. Another reason why it's so fascinating, so important, my favorite benefit is that it allows you to rethink and to recreate your life. I think it's really fascinating to think that if you especially are coming from having a lot of difficult experiences when you were little, it is absolutely fascinating to think that you can create a new meaning, a new story from that thing that it used to be super scary, super difficult for you in the past. You know, like we have the awareness to understand that a mind of a 5 years old is a totally different thing than a mind of 15 years old teenager. I don't know if you're still a teenager when you're 15, or a mind of a 30 years old person, right? We have so much experience in so many different areas in our lives. We have way more compassion than and understanding than what we could have had when we were only 5 years old. If you have a conversation with a child of only 5 years, you are going to see that they don't have context. If they see their parents arguing, they're not gonna think, they're not gonna be able to think, oh my God, they're tired, they're so stressed out because they had a very difficult day at work, and that's why they're a little irritated and they're having an argument. No, the reaction of a 5 years old when they see this is, that's danger. That means my parents don't love me. When I'm not gonna get too deep into psychology, but I invite you, if you feel inspired, ChatGPT, it's a great place these days to ask anything you want or just do your little research. But when we are little, I think it's until we are 7 or maybe a little later, we see the world in polarities. My parents, I want something and my parents give me what I want, that means they love me. If I want something and my parents don't give me, or adults around me don't give it, that means that they don't love me, and that means danger. So that's, when we hear the word trauma, we are just like, oh no, that's just so traumatizing, that's so scary, we just don't even want to talk about it. We're like, no, I don't have that. I'm good. But what trauma really is just an experience that our nervous system just didn't know how to process at the time we were experiencing that thing. So if you think about a 5 years old that doesn't have context, that doesn't have an understanding of what's happening, of course their nervous system is gonna be like, ah. So many things are traumatizing when you are little. If you don't have, again, a perfect human that doesn't exist explaining you every single second this is what's happening. And even if you have that perfect human explaining you everything that is happening, that'll be so freaking boring. A child will hate it. That's not sustainable. That's just that doesn't, it's not part of what being a human is. So we need to be traumatized. We can say that, I mean, if we didn't have any trauma, we wouldn't be able to do probably this amazing practice of recreating, rethinking our lives. And it's way more beautiful because one thing is receiving love from our parents, from other people, telling us like, you're safe, you, here is, you know, what you need, I'm giving you everything that you need. And another way more wonderful thing, and I'm sure you have the awareness to understand this because we have been talking about self-love for many years already, is to give that to ourselves. So if we have been talking about go date yourself, buy yourself some flowers, all these things in a real current life, think about you holding the hand, giving a hug to your version, the version of you when you were 5 years old, 7 years old, 3 years old, when you were a tiny baby that didn't understand what was happening, and they're terrified about that argument or that accident on the streets or that movies. Like, we traumatized from so many different things. We have the tendency to think that it was just our parents not giving us what we wanted, but scary movies, our neighbors fighting. Like, the mind of a child has a crazy amount of imagination. So there's not a way to measure how the trauma is happening in their minds. I know you might be thinking, well, these days, yes, but not back then. For us, I remind you to go back to that idea that right now we are doing the best we can, the same our parents did the best we can right now, and our parents did the best they can every second of their life. If they could be better, probably, but that was just our perspective. In their own perspective, they were doing their best. I can give you a little example of something that happened recently to me, and I want to say, once you start doing often this practice, you're gonna see that there's usually a pattern, there's usually an emotion that any kind of situation, any kind of interaction that is activating emotions in you, it's the same emotion that comes up. For me, I grew up with a family, two parents that have, and a sister that have very strong personalities, and I often felt when I was little that I wasn't seen, that it was always about them, about their emotions, about their feelings, and I just didn't have enough space to express myself. So usually when something happens, when I have, let's say, yeah, things at work or with friends, that's like the main thing, that's the theme for me. I have to say, as I mentioned earlier, when I first found about this practice, I was a little obsessed about it, and I went a little too hard. I have this side of my personality that is very intense, and I want to know everything, and I'm very curious, and I just obsess about things. So I went a little too hard on learning how to do it and doing it and doing it and doing it. So based on my experience, from the bottom of my heart, I'm a very sensitive person. I can be very intense, but at the same time, I'm a very sensitive person. So if you identify yourself as something similar as this, I want to say, especially if you're new to practicing, to doing this kind of if you're new at doing this kind of practice, the first thing I want to say is, like, you have to please be as gentle as possible. If you have experienced a lot of challenging events in your life, let's say, if you have had if you feel like you have a lot of trauma, from the bottom of my heart, I recommend you to do this practice with someone. Why it's so important to do this with someone, especially if you're coming from having very intense emotions in your life? Because we don't have the emotional structure to hold a space for the process. That's the the most simple answer I can give you right now. We need to heal it, and then we might have the structure, not only to be, to hold the space for our process, but which is super beautiful, we will be able to hold it for other people, which is what I'm experiencing at the moment. But it's so key, it is so important that you have someone else to do this process. I did it by myself many times and I didn't see much progress. And it was only until I was in a space, in a safe space with other people, that I started having these massive transformations in my life, that I was able to connect deeply with the memories. When I was able to, I have had like, I love crying. Like, I'm a Pisces sign, I have a lot of Pisces in my chart, and that's just an excuse. I'm a sensitive person and I take very seriously crying. I love crying. I know what's a good cry. So I have cried a lot in my life, but the cries I have had doing inner child, it's just like an unbelievable kind level of crying. It's a massive, if you understand what a release is, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know, it's just like mind-blowing how much you can release, how much emotions we can let go from our bodies or hearts when we do this kind of work. So again, if you are still, kind of in pain, going through a lot of heavy stuff, emotions, I recommend you to find someone. I will soon start offering group sessions to especially do inner child work. I'm gonna be super honest. I'm gonna be very selective. I'm gonna be very selective with the people I'm gonna choose, because I want to create the most safe environment for people to have the experiences I have had in my life, the experiences that have transformed me, the experiences that created the person I am today, that allowed me to be the person that I am today. The person that I feel that I am today is a person that can hold the space for other people to have this wonderful healing, these wonderful experiences, these wonderful transformations. So I will soon start sharing more about this group. I might do lives on YouTube, I might do lives on Instagram, but yeah, you will hear from me soon. I hope now you understand a little bit more about inner child work, why it's so helpful, why it's so important. I hope you're curious, I hope you're inspired to learn more, I hope you are excited to start creating this space to go inside, go back in your history and rethink and recreate your history, the person you are. For now, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. I will link all the information I mentioned below in the description of the video. For now, I hope you have a wonderful day. Peace and love.